Hey there, happy Thoughtful Thursday. So we are doing week 1 of the Emotions Aromatherapy 101 series as part of the August focus on emotional well-being. So week 1, and this is the second installment of week 1. And earlier on in the group, I started to speak about why emotions, what are emotions, and what role do emotions play. And one of the things that I said was that emotions actually add quality and colour to our lives, and often we run towards the emotions that feel good and run away from the emotions that don't. And as a consequence, we often put a lot of pressure and expectation on ourselves to feel those feel-good emotions. And when we don't, a side effect is that we end up feeling the very emotions that we are trying to run away from, and we end up feeling them out of context of the way that they were originally created to be used, or designed for us to be used. And I spoke about the fact that we feel emotion for a reason. When God created us, he said that we were good. When mankind was made in his image, we were fit for use. We were perfectly designed for how we were meant to operate in the world, including our emotions. But obviously sin came into the world and things changed. But fundamentally, that the raw elements of our being are still there. The raw way that we are supposed to work, that we were created to work, is still there. And so when I talk about rebalancing our emotions, I'm not talking about getting rid of those emotions that we don't like, because they also serve a purpose. Without those more darker or more painful emotions, would we be able to experience light, hope, joy, peace, all those things, all those more lighter, positive emotions in the same way that we do? And the answer is no. So we need the whole spectrum of emotions. They add colour and quality to our lives. So that's I guess where I stopped in the first post, and I wanted you to think about currently how you view emotions and whether that's actually really helping you or not. And I don't want to jump straight into essential oils today. What I would like to do is just talk a bit more about emotions and start to get you thinking about simple practices that you can do to rebalance those emotions. So one of the things that I've realised, one of the things that I've experienced, and many people have experienced, you probably experienced it yourself, that when we deal with negative emotions, when we experience negative emotions, we try to think or rationalize ourselves out of those emotions. So we give ourselves reasons why we shouldn't feel that way, okay? And if you've ever tried telling yourself not to think or feel a particular way, you know that it actually doesn't work very well as a method of trying to reduce those emotions. And someone recently asked me about how to deal with a particular emotion that they were having. And they asked me how I deal with emotions, and I basically said, I have a number of ways that I deal with emotions, and it depends. One of the key things is having self-awareness. The more you know yourself, and I don't just mean know yourself on a physical level, I mean know how you operate as a person on a soul level, deep down inside, then you can hear what you need. You know what you need in order to start to shift and move from one state of being, one emotional state, to another. And so I said to her, you know, it's different things, but sometimes simply acknowledging the emotion is enough. Simply saying, this is how I feel, is enough to shift that energy and move you into a different emotional state. Instead of, you know, simply trying to deny it or fight it, just acknowledging that this is how you're feeling right now is enough. So I want to give an example from the life of Yeshua, from the life of Jesus, because he experienced so many different emotions during his time on earth. In fact, the Bible says that we have a high priest who can relate to us, who understands what it means like to walk on this earth. The only way that he differs from us is that he didn't fall to sin or temptation, but in every other way, he was a human being. He experienced life on earth as we did, and he experienced many emotions, from fear all the way to love and compassion. He experienced a whole load of emotions, and I think sometimes we forget that actually Yeshua, Jesus, was quite an emotional person. And I just want to read a snippet from an article from Christianity Today. It says this. Let me just get it. That would be a good idea. Okay, I'm just gonna get it, and I will put a link up to it as well. But I'm just reading a snippet. So it says, the gospel writers paint their portraits of Jesus using a kaleidoscope of brilliant emotional colours. Jesus felt compassion. He was angry, indignant, and consumed with zeal. He was troubled, greatly distressed, very sorrowful, depressed, deeply moved and grieved. He sighed, he wept, he sobbed, he groaned. He was in agony. He was surprised and amazed. He rejoiced very greatly and was full of joy. He greatly desired and he loved. But what I find interesting is what it goes on to say next. It says this: in our quest to be like Jesus, we often overlook his emotions. Jesus reveals what it means to be fully human and made in the image of God. His emotions reflect the image of God without any deficiency or distortion. When we compare our own emotional lives to his, we become aware of our need for a transformation of our emotions so that we can be fully human as he is. And maybe you're surprised by that, but the Bible does say that we are created in the image of God. And, you know, throughout the Old Testament particularly, we discover a God of emotion. We discover a God who can feel and demonstrate emotion. And it surprises me that we forget that, yet we say that God is a person. But part of being a person is to experience emotions, is to have a soul, and to have that unique attribute of yourself which can think, feel, that has a will, that can decide, and all of those things which make us who we are. And so what this article is saying is that maybe in our pursuit to run away from certain emotions, we are not allowing ourselves to be as fully human as what Yeshua, Jesus, was. So that's an interesting thing to bear in mind. So Yeshua never denied his emotions. Instead, he saw emotion as information. And this is something that, that God really revealed to me. Emotion is information. That's what it is. So emotion informed him of what was going on inside of him, what was happening with him at that point in time. And as a consequence of that, he was in touch with the fullness of his humanity. But, and this is the key thing, he wasn't mastered by his humanity. He wasn't mastered by his emotions. He let himself experience the emotion up until the point that it had served its purpose, up until the point that it had served him. And we can look at that as maybe that service was that it enabled him, empowered him, motivated him to take a specific course of action, whether it was to heal, whether it was to show compassion to somebody, whether it was to confront somebody. It elicited, it drove a response from him. So in the process of experiencing the emotion, or allowing himself to experience the emotion, there was an end result. And the end result looked like things like confronting injustice, crying, praying, healing, going away to a quiet place. And in that process, the emotion and the energy, because emotion is energy in motion, the energy moved, it shifted, because it was no longer, that information was no longer relevant to where he was now. So here we see the second purpose of emotion. So earlier on I said that emotion adds colour and quality to our life. But the second purpose of emotion is really that information factor. That information allows us to be connected to ourselves outside of the more kind of conscious cerebral modes that we tend to operate, and really go deep into ourselves and connect with ourselves. And it also is the energy which drives action as well. So as I mentioned, even though Yeshua had these emotions, he was never mastered by these emotions. And I think the reason is because of the strength of his inner man, the strength of his inner person, the strength of his spiritual man. But also, he understood that just because he felt a particular way, it didn't have to consume him. It didn't have to master him. He didn't have to give over himself to it. It didn't have to exert authority over him. And I think that's, where we sometimes go astray. We kind of feel like we feel it, and there's this fear of, unless it's a positive emotion, and I think even sometimes we can fear positive emotions because we feel that, what if I allow this to take over? Where will it lead me? Where will the outcome of this emotion be? And so even though we may experience a positive emotion, it's tinged with fear as well. But what am I saying? So he didn't allow that emotion to master him, to govern him, to have authority over him. And I understand that that can be hard for us, especially when our emotions are strong. It can be quite hard whether the emotion is a positive one, like love or happiness, whether it's a more distressing emotion. Sometimes it can feel like it's not easy to take back that mastery, to take back that control. But as I mentioned at the beginning, one practice that has helped me, and this is, I want to bring in hopefully every week, a simple mind body practice, soul body, spirit body, whatever you want to call it, practice that can help you rebalance, because it's all about rebalance, shifting the emotion, shifting the energy from one state to another. So very simply, just acknowledging the emotion. Sometimes we know what the emotion is, sometimes we don't. There can be difficulties with that, but generally we know where we are experiencing the emotion in our body. So it may be we're experiencing the emotion over our chest, in our heart. It could be in our throat, could be in our tummy, in our back even, in our forehead, on our shoulders. It doesn't matter. But we try to locate and isolate where that emotion is, and just say to ourselves, I am sad, or I feel sad, and just be with yourself there as you are experiencing that emotion, and see whether that just the very process of acknowledging that emotion in a very compassionate and non-judgmental way will cause some of the energy or the force of that emotion to subside and begin to shift into something else, or at least lose intensity. So that's what I wanted to round up with after week 1 of emotions, aromatherapy even 101. And next week we'll go into this in a bit more detail. Okay, that's it from me. Take care.